Welcome everyone to the captive audience. Sorry, we had a technical problem and we figured it out. We indeed have, and we didn't even need to call Elon Musk to do it. It is March 5th, 2025, and it's a day after President Trump addressed Congress. And we're going to talk about that a lot here tonight. And I am very pleased to be here with regular Wednesday night co-host Don Anderson. Don, great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. I don't get to do this very often with you, Kevin, but always thrilled when I get a chance. So, and what a day to get to do it.
I
Unbelievable.
know
Yeah.
it's a
Uh,
treat.
yeah, I've sat through a lot of these things. I got to be honest. When Biden was in office, I avoided everything. I just couldn't take it. I'm sorry, I couldn't listen to the guy. Not that he talked very often, by the way, but I actively avoided. But other than him, I've been watching these things going back to the Reagan administration, and I have never seen anything like last night.
Yeah, it was a lot of truth bombs that the Democrats, they are stuck on stupid. And I'm not just being like partisan facetious or
There we go. Can you hear me?
okay.
I
Now
can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. It's
Okay.
me. I was
Well,
cut off. It was my microphone. Can you hear me now?
yep, everything's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
some weird thing where my microphone decided to disconnect itself somehow.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
ask me. Anyway, nope, we're back.
All
Yes.
right.
So anyway, this has been hard to get on the air today, but it's a good day to be talking about what is happening in our country. And President Trump really kind of laid the wood to these guys, and he did it. He's like, he doesn't really care if these Democrats are going to be all upset with him. He placed the credit where credit is due and blame where blame is due, and vowed to fix it. He said, I was elected to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm doing it. And he reminded all the Democrats how people voted. Democrats have been running around saying that all this Doge stuff is undemocratic. But actually, if people vote for someone to do what he's doing and then he does it, that is the essence of democracy. That is the essence of the will of the people being reflected in their elected officials, their government. And if bureaucrats aren't allowed to be fired and you can't tell them they can't do this and they can't do that, and you're the head of the executive branch, then actually that is where bureaucracy runs the country. It's not democracy. And I think President Trump made that very, very clear. And he laid out in a lot of detail the stuff they're finding, the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and just blew up all the talking points. But I thought it was fabulous in the first few minutes. That one congressman, I believe is he from Texas, that got booted.
Al Green. Unfortunately, he shares a name with one of the great singers of the 70s, but not that Al Green.
Yeah, he's not the good Al Green; he's the bad Al Green.
He's the bad Al Green.
And but he just refused to stop talking during the president's speech. And it's like, well, look, you're not the president. The House of Representatives governs, does the invitation, the official invitation, and the speaker governs that chamber. That is the House chamber. And he said, people, seeing that someone will not cease violating decorum, then the sergeant at arms will restore order. Please have the gentleman removed, and they did.
Here's the thing about that whole thing. I think one of the great things about Trump is we've got muscular conservatism, something we haven't had in a really long time. We've got someone who will speak his mind and say exactly what he thinks. And I think that the center of the country absolutely loves that. And it doesn't matter which party you're from, the country loves a straight shooter. So if you go back to Truman, that's why people love Truman. That's why people love Theodore Roosevelt. That's why people love Ronald Reagan, the great communicator, because you knew what he was saying. He said it, they meant it, and then they did it. And we haven't had a president do that in such a long time. We've had, the Republicans in the past constantly tiptoeing, constantly being afraid, constantly waffling. We've got people running for office like the McCain, the Romney, the Rockefellers, the weenies that just never get anything done because they won't say what they're going to do and then execute on it because they're too afraid somebody's going to call them a name. And the great thing about Trump, he's impervious to it. And the other thing about it is we got to realize, you think back to the history of the presidents, how many, like 95% of the presidents have been either generals or they've been lawyers, and mostly lawyers. So they're creatures of the establishment. Think about what percentage of the population are lawyers. It's a fraction of the population. So they don't come from the general population. They can't relate to the general population. But when we have a couple of people who've come from the real world, if you will, someone who's run a business, someone who's negotiated deals for a living, someone who's used to being in front of the camera, and we'll get around to the Ukraine thing, I'm sure, in a little bit. But here's a guy who's a master of the room, master of reading the room, master of looking at people and then being able to be real with them, which you saw in this meeting in spades. It is just incredible, the impact that he's had just from that. And if I might say one more point, Kevin, because I thought this was amazing too. Did you see the polling that came from CNN and ABC?
Yeah, so I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
It was CBS News is mentioned here, and I think there was also another one. It said 67% of those who watched President Donald Trump's address Tuesday night to a joint session of Congress approved of the speech. It was on a poll that was released this morning. Now, the viewership is skewed towards Republicans, just like during the Biden years, it was skewed towards Democrats. You described how you probably didn't want to watch that. I don't think I watched it. I watched some. Mm-hmm. But I watched it more as a political analysis.
But to have a CNN poll that they'd actually reported, I was shocked. CNN's poll had 44% very positive, 25% somewhat positive. You add that up, that's like what? 40 and 20, 60. That's like 69%, and only 31% negative. And that is on their mouthpiece, the mouthpiece of the left. So they got hammered every which way you possibly can. And remember, there's 30% that you're never going to get because the 30% are insane. That's the same percentage that thought that when Trump was negotiating with Biden, when Biden had lost his mind, 30% thought Biden did great. So right there, 30% of the population is off the table. So to get 70%, that's the maximum you can get. It was a blowout by any measure.
Well, I was going to say that I've just gone to the CNN website, and I'm sure with a Google search I can correct this, but what is fascinating is that I'm not finding the poll very easily. I'm having to hunt around.
I bet you aren't.
They reported it and then they quickly moved on. And they're still kind of playing their games, but at the same time, and Trump presidency, right? There's a little shortcut that you can click on, and it's all about tariffs. They moved on to tariffs, right? Mm-hmm. There is the concern about losing office space. Yeah, you mean the fact that people don't show up for work in person? You should keep that space. And then the other thing is, and they have several buildings here in Oregon that are being sold. That made some headlines here. Let me just see here. Oregon federal buildings going up for sale according to a government list.
Mhm.
And old courthouses, warehouses,
Mhm.
10 different buildings from Portland to Baker City are being sold. There's some pretty decent buildings in there, actually. And those buildings, the federal building, they have 2 federal buildings in Eugene. They don't need 2. So they're going to consolidate to 1. And it's actually a decent building. Maybe you turn it into the much needed housing apartments or office space for a business that's desperate to expand and can't afford to build a new place. Or, frankly, if the state and the city are hiring a bunch of government workers, I don't want them to, but if they are, put them there. But there are people that are literally losing their minds about this. Well, this is what they're talking about on CNN. I'm scrolling, and so White House press secretary says Trump sent her note during media briefing to tout poll numbers after speech. And it's according to CNN's polling conducted by SRSS, a GOP heavy audience greeted the speech with tempered positivity. Boy, that's a creative use of adjectives.
Yeah, they are in such hurt city. I mean, just to give you I scribbled some notes here on just the optics of the thing, right? So there was that part, and just a couple of things that you could see they panned the camera. And again, this is ABC I watched it on, I was shocked at how balanced it was. So they sat on their hands, they wouldn't cheer for things like the 13 so the terrorists, they arrested the terrorists, they killed 13 Americans, the Abbey Gate terrorists, right? No cheering, no nothing, stone faces from Democrats. The 6-year-old boy survived cancer. No cheer, no standing up, nothing. No taxes on tips, no women and men's sports, no reduction in taxes. They didn't stand up for any of this stuff, right? No cheering, reducing the deficit, reducing government waste, resolving the border crisis in 45 days. Parents who had children murdered by illegals or who had lost spouses, the most poignant moments ever. And they sat on their hands. The guy who got rescued from Russia just recently, it is 95-year-old mom.
Journalist. He's a journalist.
Yeah. I thought that was one of the most wonderful things I ever saw. Mother looked good. She's 95. She got her son back after 4 years, and they couldn't cheer, couldn't stand up. I mean, what a horrendous look. The poor kid from the mom from Georgia who lost her daughter at the University of Georgia, couldn't stand up, couldn't cheer. They never called any of these people. And then when you layer on top of this, the fact that the guy that got rescued from Russia, the Biden administration spent all that energy and time to go rescue a WNBA player who had the right color, the right skin tone, and the right transgender identity, and they got her out. And they left this guy there to sit in squalor for 4 years. I mean, the look is so horrendous, and the leadership of the Democratic Party is not reading the room. It's like, how can you be so blind? I mean, none of these are winning topics. The poor guy got spiked in the face with a volleyball by a grown man, basically, right? And now she can't play volleyball anymore. Again,
she had brain injury. She can't play sports anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I saw that on video. I couldn't believe it. And they sat there on their hands, wouldn't cheer, like nothing. They think that's going to get them somewhere. I love the fact that they showed people need to see them exactly for who they are. That is evil. And there's no other way that you can frame it. They're evil.
Yeah. And I think they missed an opportunity to sound reasonable, and they don't care. In fact, I heard somebody saying in the aftermath of the speech last night, analysis, I think it was on Hannity, that really now the Democrat Party, the entire party, or at least the people who are vocal and shape public perception of the party, all sound like the Squad, who used to be the group that everybody said, well, they're the crazy ones and we're the reasonable ones. And it's like, no, actually, this is the Squad has swallowed up much of the Democrat Party, and now there's, I think, a bunch of Democrats who feel like they have to, pledge their allegiance to the squad, but then they must know that this is not going to lead to good things. And there are a lot of people that are I'm sure in Democrat circles, they know that this is a bad sign for where their party's going. They're destroying themselves, and Trump is giving them some salt. Here's a bunch of salt. Now throw it in your own wounds. And they're saying, okay.
They're going to have to hit rock bottom. Apparently, the camera would pan to the Democratic side, and I'm telling you, it was like they would pan these super sour-faced, wrinkled up old prunes who were like in their 80s and 90s. And hey, we're all going to get old. I'm not necessarily beating that up, but they were just mean and nasty. It was incredible.
I liked how Trump pointed to the people in the chamber, the Democrats, because that's part of the problem, is that the Democrats think they can do this and everybody will think that's fine. And it's not true. But he said, this is my 5th such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me and I realize there's absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy, to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure for the most devastating disease, a disease that will wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. These people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. It's very sad, and it shouldn't be this way. And you know what? I think that line right there, it's the money line. It shouldn't be this way. I bet that would poll pretty well if it got out into a poll. And so, what do you think of this?
Well,
there's somebody wrote in a commentary I just posted here from the Federalist, said that a colleague of his, Jordan Boyd, pointed out that Democrats protest Trump's agenda because it forces them to celebrate America's wins. And I think there might be some truth to that.
I agree, yeah.
But I also think that what Democrats think is winning is losing. And therefore, when you have that upside down like worldview where you just can't even get it right, I think they're lost. I think that they were the only time Democrats cheered is when it was an opportunity to talk about prolonging the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, and that's another look. But remember, they hate the United States. At bottom, those people that we used to think were crazy when we were in college, 30 or 40, in my case, 30 or 40 years ago, those are just a few loons in the sides, just like you said before. But those people have risen to occupy all the positions of power now on the left. And that's what they truly believe. They think the United States is a source of all evil, is the worst thing that ever happened on the planet, and needs to be reduced in size. So any success that America has is a bad thing. That's what they think. And you have to understand that at bottom, they hate America and they hate freedom. And they think they should be able to dictate to the rest of the world how you should live. That's what they think about them.
Now, I think they also, when America comes out ahead of other countries, Democrats consider that a loss.
That's absolutely
and especially if it means that Democrats politically don't benefit from it, or monetarily don't benefit from it. It's hilarious that these Democrats are saying, save Medicaid. Okay. Save Social Security. Save Medicare. You know how you do that? You stop paying for fraud. You stop giving money to people who aren't legitimate recipients.
You mean 300-year-olds?
More money for people who are.
You mean all those 300-year-olds and 200-year-olds?
Yeah. And then, of course, they said Musk steals. They're holding up signs that says Musk steals. Really? So he can't get any of this money. It's the most visible, transparent operation ever. Yeah. All this money that they are stopping from being paid for garbage, for things that people never voted for, that Congress never explicitly authorized, all this woke and transgender garbage all over the world that they're paying for, and it domestically, DEI. they're saying he's stealing that.
Well, when they read the list,
What they're saying is that he's stealing the money back for the people from the Democrats and all their organizations that were being funded by us, by the taxpayer. All this money that's going to these organizations that are administering climate justice and transgender equity and all this stuff, that was money that frankly was ending up in the pockets of Democrat supporters and activists.
see, people can see that that is nuts. One thing that you also saw here was another visual. A lot of them were looking at their phones. So here was the thing. Going in, their strategy was to be disruptive, to make a lot of noise, to hold up these signs, to walk out, pass out in the aisles. That quieted down pretty early on. And the reason I'm pretty sure is, they have those polls that they do while something's live and in process. So I think the polls were showing them, they had people on their cell phones telling them, ixnay on that, because it was polling so bad, like having to drag that congressman out. And I think that's why they quieted down, because it got pretty quiet.
I noticed I liked Speaker Johnson saying, well, then you're gone, dude.
Yeah,
because then the rest of them are like, okay, I think he will do that. Now, you know what? They probably, in hindsight, would have tried to create that situation and try to force the sergeant in arms to come in and remove them all. I could see them doing that. But here's one thing that was discovered. There were some walkouts, but no one really noticed them.
Right.
They were not coordinated, but clearly planned as random numbers of members of Congress. I think there was some of the Oregon delegation that walked out, that they posted clearly pre-written statements. So they didn't show up and say, I have an open mind. I really want to hear what the president has to say. And if I don't like it, then I'll walk out. No, they wrote it all up before they went in there and had it released right when they walked out so that they could jazz up their fundraising on their website and their follows and shares on social media, claiming they were too overwhelmed to listen to the speech. It's like, and I loved it. The White House Communications Director Stephen Chung replied to this California congressman who had the fake statement that he claimed was spontaneous. He says, nobody even noticed or cared. You're as relevant as a used Zyn pouch. I thought that was great.
See, the great thing is, finally, the Republicans are playing hardball. They've been playing hardball for 40 years. And the conservatives have played softball right up until Trump came along. And so finally, I think most of us are thrilled to see somebody play hardball. I mean, I was talking to another friend, and he was like, it's a little bit too rough, a little bit too nice for me. Or he was kind of upset about the whole thing with Zelensky and how that went down. I was like, no, if they want to cook the sausage in public, let's cook the sausage in public. And I thought that was awesome, the way Trump treated the guy and the way he asked for it. It wasn't like Trump and Vance threw the first punch in that. That went exactly the way it needed to go, and he's come groveling back already.
Well, and we're done. I talked with Jeff Reynolds about this yesterday in the show that we did, and I said President Trump has grabbed and removed and ripped up the "Kick Me" sign that Joe Biden put on America's back. Yeah, it's gone, and some people haven't gotten the message of what that means. We are not the equal of these countries that are coming in and demanding that we have a obligation to give them unlimited resources and support policies against our own best interests. We're not their equals. We're the superpower in the world, and we're starting to act like it. That's what we're doing. And these guys, if they want to come in and berate the president, if they want to meet with Democrats first, get a bunch of advice about what to do and not to do, then show up in the Oval Office, fail to sign an agreement they indicated they would sign, and then get in a tussle with the president in front of the media, and then go and unapologetically do interviews after that. And then finally, when the aid is cut off a day or two later, you send a letter, mea culpa, using language that they know actually the president uses about the importance of the United States, begging to come back and say they want a lasting peace. They're ready to negotiate. This is why a lot of countries thought they could just do anything and say anything about the United States, and there wouldn't be any consequences. It's over. It's over.
It worked before. And that's the thing with these people. They will keep doing it because it's worked before. And he just had to push the buttons and find what's that old FAOA. We can't say what that means on the air, but I think everybody here knows what that means. And they messed around and found out. And then on top of that, he goes to the Europeans and tries to get them on his side. Well, guess what? They don't have any money. They don't have any military equipment because they only spend 1% of their GDP on military. So it's
well, and they've let their entire industrial base for producing and supplying military armaments atrophy to the point that they're going to have to spend a lot of money. And guess what? In the end, they're probably going to have to buy it from us because we're the only ones going to get our act together and produce this stuff. And so I think they're stuck because they're getting a big dose of truth. And I talked about this with Jeff Reynolds yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so the Europeans are actually being saved from themselves by Trump because there's no way that this current circumstance can be sustained.
No,
where they talk tough and then they point to Big Brother Uncle Sam to come in and do the dirty work. No, you pay for it. You're rich. Yeah. And if you're not as rich as you should be, you should figure out how to do that because we did.
Well, and here's the thing. So we support Germany's 60-day vacations, their 100% health care that everybody likes to talk about. Well, guess who's been paying for that? We have. We've been subsidizing it by covering their defense for their lazy butts for the last 80 years. And it's about time Americans have gotten sick and tired of covering their butts. And then the lack of gratitude on top of that. That's why I absolutely love what's happened here. And one other thing I would add, people keep pillaring Putin. Now, I am not here to say Putin's the greatest, is the nicest guy in the world. He ain't no saint. But then none of these world leaders are saints. So let's just get that off the table. Here's the bottom line. And I can't believe no one's talking about this. Ukraine sits on the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Straits. Their biggest naval base is Sebastopol, which sits on the Black Sea, which gives them their only access to the Black Sea.
Bosphorus and Dardanelles are the straits between European and Asian Turkey, where Istanbul is.
Yeah, right, exactly. The old Constantinople, right? Yeah. There is no way that they are going to allow a NATO country there. It's just not going to happen. And this part is, think about all the commerce that flows through that strait. I'll save it for a later podcast because I got some detail on that. But the amount of commerce that flows through those straits and the amount of military access is Russia's only access to the sea, to the Atlantic, right? That is not frozen over part of the year. They're not giving that up. It's not going to happen. And that part just gets missed in all of this. And it was never going to happen. So, and we're not willing to put boots on the ground. I don't think any American parents are willing to send their teenagers over to go fight for that. Hell, I don't even think Europeans are willing to do it. Now, they're more than willing to watch Ukrainians get killed over it, apparently. But it's not going to happen.
So, Oregon Democrats, a couple of them walked out. I'll tell you who they are. Representatives Andrea Salinas and Maxine Dexter, who largely got Maxine Dexter is the 3rd district. That's Portland. Salinas is in a district where she didn't have that tough a run this last time. And so they had their staged departures. Jeff Merkley tweeted during the Trump's address, attacking the president, trying to get the term Trumpflation to be adopted. Yeah, which is crazy. Democrats used to love tariffs, but they loved them because they wanted them forever. And President Trump puts these in there because those countries have put them against our products. And we are like, well, we're not suckers. Democrats love being suckers. And of course, the price of eggs went up 50% before President Trump took office. So he's cleaning up a mess. And the Democrats are trying to, redirect and project on that one. But here's the other people. So Janelle Bynum stayed in the Capitol chamber for the whole speech. And then upon exiting, you know, and she talked about Liz Crandall, her guest, who was a staffer with the Deschutes National Forest. By the way, that staffer, public relations person, apparently essential personnel. Jeff Reynolds and I just laughed our butts off about that. That's all she could find. And, there's no way our government could go on. Our forests will completely burn to the ground if we don't have a public relations person representing that forest. It is a horrific betrayal of the American people. Yeah, right. And then they started talking about Lori Chavez Dreamer, who's not in Congress anymore. She's labor secretary. And then Ron Wyden did a 4,000 person virtual town hall of a bunch of people who weren't going to watch his speech anyway, where they all got together and complained and indulged in conspiracy theories about Doge during President Trump's speech. Big deal. Who cares? And then Jeff Merkley, of course, then said that it did some kind of town hall afterwards. It's all, they're just trying to re-engage their base and feel like they can get their mojo back. It's not working. They tried to bring all these fired federal workers with them, but they've decided that it's a principled position to defend bureaucracy and defend not looking for and stopping fraud, waste, and abuse.
You got to look at that. The rest of the country is not looking at that positively. I mean, on the one hand, you could think, okay, they're going to have people out here feeling sorry for these people who got laid off. But the vast majority of the population looks at that. You got 8 months of like pay, and your average pay is like 6 figures. The average person doesn't get that when they get laid off. They get like 3 or 4 months, and they're not getting 6 figures either. And on top of that, they're expected to actually work. To be questioned on 5 things you did this week, I got news for you, not unusual in the real world. So
Democrats do that, but they only do it when it helps them get reelected.
Yeah.
Obviously they don't really want to create any incentive for the federal bureaucracy that they put in place forever to explain itself. And they also are determined to use the court system. They think the court system is going to help them force the government to send money for gender affirming care to Oregon. That's the transgender operations and drugs. They think they're going to be able to stop the federal government from deporting criminals, rapists, murderers, because they say, well, we're a sanctuary state. You can't do anything. No, actually, that's not going to work out for them. And what's happening now is the Democrats are running out of money because it turns out that a lot of their tough talk and their bravado was being paid for by federal taxpayers. And it's over. The gravy train is over. The COVID money is gone. And now they're going to start looking for taxes wherever they can get it.
How much of that vote buying and that machinations they've been doing do you think came through outfits like USAID?
Yeah.
People standing on the corner, professional protesters. I think part of the reason they're out there right now is they're not getting paid. They can't pay them to do it, which means this next midterm could get really interesting. I don't think these people are going to change on their own. I think they're going to have to be removed from office.
And I think what we should be doing here on our job on Captive Audience is to point out how they are actually removing themselves from office by their behavior. And then you've got sanctuary city mayors and sanctuary state governors saying that they're defending sanctuary policies, but then they say they're going to cooperate on, quote, criminal warrants, unquote. If somebody has a criminal record and they got let into the country, they don't belong here. Out. Yeah. Democrats actually believe that those guys should just be allowed to stay as long as they want. Yeah. And until the government tracks down these millions of people in the country, hundreds of thousands of which have criminal records for serious crimes in many cases that took place here and in other countries, and issue a warrant, they won't do anything. The Boston mayor made a huge mistake the other day by expressing sympathy for a knife wielding illegal immigrant who injured or killed someone, and she acted as if that was the victim and expressed their sympathies. And I'm just like, boy, like you said, these folks just have to be removed from office, and they are in part creating their own reasons to remove them from office. One such example in Oregon is they want to put a 4% tax on tires. They say it's because of tire pollution, except it's not to clean up anything with tires. It is to take the money and put it into trains that people won't ride.
Oh, it's to get you from having the freedom to drive around in your car. That is the Oregon strategy. That's the Portland strategy anyway, is to make it miserable for you to drive.
They're going to use the funds for rail transit, so-called tire pollution, and wildlife crossings. Now, if you spend $1,200 on a new set of tires for your SUV, and lots of people have SUVs, 4% is a hell of a lot of money. And that's also going to contribute to inflation. These guys don't get it, but they're going to start going and searching for money, and they're not going to be able to go get that money from someone else anymore. And they're going to refuse to stop spending money on dumb things. So maybe this is what the next election is going to look like with these guys. By the way, some people now, senators, there's Rand Paul said that some of the things that Musk is doing that then come up against court rulings, if those court rulings say that Congress must participate in this, he and some other Republicans are saying, you might have to have Congress approve this stuff. And you know what I say to that? Get busy, go do it. Yeah. Congress is moving at the speed, glacial speed, compared to Donald Trump and Doge, which is moving at hyper speed. And if that pushes Congress to start taking action, because I would really like to see some people in Congress think that they can actually stop these things just so that because they feel it's all going too fast, and then just stand in the way, become loggerheads or blockages. I want it done. I want Congress to take action. So this is permanent changes that we got.
Yes.
Permanent.
Yeah.
And we're going to hear more about this in the coming weeks, because I think Elon Musk actually said something to that effect, saying, well, good, I'd love it if Congress would come in and do these things. They'll focus on the things the executive branch could do, which I think there's plenty of constitutional justification for that. And, we'll have the Congress get around to doing what it's supposed to be doing. And you know what? If that leads to some tough votes for Democrats, great. Yeah. Go ahead, vote for fraud and waste and abuse continuing.
And the one thing I have to say for the first time in my lifetime that I can remember is when Republicans behaved like Democrats from a strategic standpoint. They actually all lined up and got behind these cabinet picks. I mean, ordinarily we'd have these people who just wouldn't line up. Democrats, they rally around evil like nobody's business, but Republicans just can't seem to do it. So that was a huge positive.
You're right; it has changed, and I thought also the reaction of the members of Congress to his speech was pretty solid. Like, and the Democrats are trying to figure out what to unite around, and that's why they're flailing and doing these silly things and doing stunts and holding up signs. And great, keep doing that, but they're not solving any problems.
No. And
they're not participating in the solution either. By the way, there was a Supreme Court decision which it was a 5-4 decision, and it was that the Trump administration couldn't stop the flow of foreign aid that was approved by Congress and issued during the Biden administration. So some of the stuff, it's like the stuff that's sort of in transit between administrations. At first, they had frozen all foreign aid, but there's $2 billion in taxpayer dollars that the Supreme Court said still had to be allowed to go through. So I think this is a much smaller issue, but there was a dissent by Justice Alito who called the decision stunning. He said he was stunned that a single district court judge who likely lacks jurisdiction to have unchecked power to compel the government of the United States to pay out and probably lose forever $2 billion tax dollars. That he said they don't have no such power. And this is so I think all this stuff that's happening with the court system, that's what should happen. We should be forcing into the court system, make the law become clarified. And where the law says there's limits on the executive branch or the current administration, then Congress, do your job. Yeah. That's why you're there. You've got a majority in both houses of Congress, not just to feel like you're in charge, but to do something. And they will, I hope. Mm-hmm. By the way, there was a Democrat member of Congress, Representative Sylvester Turner from Houston. He was from Texas, and he's a former Houston mayor, I think. Mm-hmm. He actually died after the speech. He watched the speech, went home, and he died.
Wow.
I know and of course, I know they'd love to blame Trump for this, but some of these guys, they haven't said what the cause of death is, mm-hmm. but they said he battled cancer in the past.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that he goes and he sees a speech that I'm sure he wasn't very pleased with, and goes back to his office or to the home and dies. So this is a revolution that's taking place, and it is challenging something that has gone too far in one direction for too long, right?
Yeah, no, we've been in an asymmetrical war for the last, probably the last 30 years. The rest of us didn't know. It just became very obvious under the Biden administration. On the scale, you have to think about the way you personally felt, what they've done to us in the last 4 years. So it used to be that if you were living a middle-class life and you're working your middle-class job and you're busting your rear and you're paying the bills, you're paying the freight, taking care of the kids, you can hear this crazy stuff. Oh, that's over on some university campus somewhere. Oh, that's just South Side Chicago. Oh, that's just like, Southeast Portland. And you just keep on moving about your life, right? Mm-hmm. But what they did in the last 4 years is they made sure that every American citizen felt that. You had to put a mask on your face. Some of you lost your jobs because you wouldn't take the shot. Some of you took the shot and got sick. You watched relatives die from the shot. We've seen everything imaginable. Your inflation's through the roof. They did that to us. They got us in a war we have no business being in. And they're on the news every day telling you that your kids are lying to you, that your kids are, need to be changed in their sex and chopping them up behind your back. I mean, there is no way you could escape what these communists have done to us for the last 4 years. And the good news about this is they've caused, I think, a great American awakening. In the same way that when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, we finally woke up a sleeping giant. And I hate to say it, too bad we had to go through that for that to happen, but I'm actually glad it happened. They pushed too far. And here we are.
They did, and they knew better. I've been listening in the last few days to some Democrat analysts who are saying, I don't know if it was Bill Maher, but some commentator as well, saying, why didn't we do something about what was happening at the border while we had the power to do it? Because clearly they've paid a steep political price for that. And they handed it right to somebody who everybody knows is going to solve it when he says, and it has plummeted to historic lows, what's going on there. But they knew that this was poison for the country and political poison for them. And they decided, let's do it anyway. So for a while, the Democrats are definitely going to deservedly suffer for what they've done. And they're going to keep scrambling to find some way to spin or frame what's happening with the Republicans and what Elon Musk and President Trump and others are doing as somehow evil, bad, stealing, all this stuff. It's like, why would a trillionaire be interested in stealing millions of dollars that everyone could see him stealing if he tried to do it, while he's trying to uncover fraud, waste, and abuse, which he is stopping and exposing? It's the dumbest thing ever. But there are actually Democrats who are walking around saying, see, that's what's happening. He's going to destroy Social Security. And it's like, it's a fact-free world of nonsense.
The two people that need this the least are Trump and Musk.
Yeah, they don't need
this the least. They could have walked away and lived a rich life and been good with it, which makes what they're doing even more moral.
Yeah. Well, they realize how precious and important the country is.
Yeah.
And Democrats don't really care because they're just exploiting it. By the way, I just saw something very interesting. I can't believe that this is already the case. A Virginia congressman, Republican, you know how the Clinton administration, Clintons gave away, well, actually it was the Obama administration, but the Clintons participated in giving away like a bunch of our uranium reserves to Russia, I think it was, Russia.
Right.
And there's a Virginia congressman who has a bill, the Uranium for Energy Independence Act of 2025, to declare uranium to be on the federal list of minerals deemed essential for economic and national security. Can you believe that that's not already the case? Like, gee, I wonder if uranium is important. We might need it for so. What could we use that for? Gee, so there's weapons. Are there some weapons that use that stuff? And then I don't know. I heard there's energy that we generate from that. Isn't there some energy?
There's lots of things like that.
But I love the fact that this guy. But sometimes I think that the stuff we're doing to fix the failures of the past, particularly the last administration, are just common sense. Like, duh.
Or how about English as the national language? I assumed it was.
Well, one of my favorite moments of the speech, and we should probably wrap up here soon, even though we started late because of the technical problems, was when President Trump stood up after explaining exactly what he had done to stop a lot of the garbage that the previous administration was doing and funding and mandating. And he said, America is a woke nation no more. Woke is over. It was great, wasn't it?
It was like so awesome.
And the Democrats in Congress are just, I think they're apoplectic in their heads. They're still believing like, yes, sir, it's a good idea to have men, beating the hell out of women in women's sports. That's what Title IX was all about. And they are actually thinking that's a real thing. And it's over. It's done. I don't think that there's any way they can turn back the clock on common sense. They may try, but this is where Congress has got to do its job and make it so that things like that will have to be done with enough votes and a president over presidential vetoes and all kinds of stuff like that. We need to rebuild the firewall against this crap happening again. And by the way, we have a country that needs defending. We have a country an economy that needs prosperity. We need kids who need an education they're just not getting in today's education system. And we have streets that need to be made safe again. And we have, drug addicted homeless roaming around that frankly need to be brought off of those addictive substances and out of that, and not given endless resources to continue to sustain the problem and fuel all the problems that it causes. There's a lot of work to do, but just stopping all the bad stuff has been a massive task, hasn't it?
And the citizens in these cities, let's face it, I can't remember the stat, in terms like 90-something% of the counties in the country are red. Where the pushback comes from are in these blue cities. So the citizens of Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, Portland, Seattle, all of those places have to wake up and stop voting for the same stuff. You look at Chicago, they got rid of Lightfoot, who was absolutely crazy, and they replaced her with another person who was just as crazy. They've got to stop being in the habit. I'm going to vote Democrat because that's the way my parents voted. Well, your parents were voting for that party doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And you have to realize that, hey, even RFK left the party.
They booed a Democrat that's in charge of the health and human services department. They booed him.
Yeah.
That
I
just tells
never
you that's a Democrat Party that almost hates itself now.
I never thought in my lifetime that the Democrat Party would hate on a Kennedy. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't if you're old enough, you can't believe it.
Yeah.
Camelot, and they hate him too. So that tells you how crazy they are.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
they don't they're living in a different world of information. They have an upside down view of what is good for the country, and we saw what it did for the last 4 years. And it's created a mess that has to be cleaned up, but it's also created an opportunity for better policies to come in that people were going to want. I loved what I heard about this pipeline program that's being prepared up in Alaska
oh,
that Japan and South Korea are going to be able to plug into and provide all the investment.
oh,
I think that's great because why would we want to buy a drop of anything
mhm.
from someone else who may not have our best interests at when we can have when we and our allies can actually support each other in that way,
Yeah. Oh, we can
you
have
know?
complete dependency. I mean, Anwar opening up offshore drilling, the Gulf of America.
Yeah.
Uh, we are we could be completely energy independent. We were before. The pipeline on the East Coast that Biden shut down with the very first act he did. And by the way, if you're in Pennsylvania and you voted for Biden, you are a fool. And hopefully they've seen their foolishness. Um, but the amount of jobs and the jobs growth that would bring to this country, I see economic boom. That's what I see. There'll be a period of transition. There always is, because it's going to take a while for that technology and those resources to get here and get up and running. But a year or two from now, I see an explosion. Um,
Yeah. And then we have to fight on every front because I think Oregon is a place that will eventually there are enough people here that do think that there's a need for some common sense. They just didn't know how messed up their own state is. When they
yeah,
find out just how much stuff was being paid for by federal money that's not going to come anymore and should never have been paid for, and then they come and say, we're going to keep doing this stuff, but we're going to raise your taxes to do it. I think that's a great fight to have in 2026.
oh
I
yeah,
love it.
yeah. And I think Portlanders will come around. And I say Portlanders because the rest of the state is probably already there. Like every one of these states, you take out a few counties. You take out Lane County in Eugene, Multnomah County in Portland, maybe Washington County, and the rest of the state's red. It won't is We're not that far away. And same with California. They're going to lose like 5 electoral votes, because of what they've done to run people out of the state, and
Yep.
the entire inner part of that state is red. And given what happened in Southern California in the last few weeks, I think that's going to be over too. So it's
Yeah,
close.
we need to make sure that our forest policies up here in Oregon get fixed. It's going to start now, I think, from the federal level, but it's forcing a debate here in the states, in the state of Oregon, and I would love to see. I'd love to be a part of making that a permanent change for our state, um, and put behind us all the nonsense that we've been accepting as a state for decades. It's time. I'm done breathing smoke every summer. Smoke.
It's such a beautiful state, in my opinion, the most beautiful state. I think the three Western states are the most beautiful states in the country, and I've been to all of them with the exception of 3 or 4, and they are just gorgeous. Unfortunately, they attract liberals. Love beauty.
Yeah.
And they love beautiful places. They come and they ruin them, and we just have to reclaim them.
Yeah. They just don't want anybody to be able to survive living in the beautiful parts.
That's
So,
pretty much it.
well, I think that's going to change here too.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a great show, Don. And, I know that we had some technical difficulties in the beginning, and sorry for that, our loyal viewers, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. We got to listen to, talk about, and celebrate a speech to Congress by the president that just underscored everything that I know at one time seemed almost impossible. If you wind the clock back 4 years, this just seemed to be the furthest thing from possible. And we never even knew how bad it was going to get at that point in the Biden administration. But America is back, and the Democrats have turned their back on America. They did it last night. So it's time for people to declare their independence from the Democrat Party. That's what really is the key to the future. Think for yourself. Look at who's actually solving problems and who is the problem, and frankly, start to vote that way. I think that's our message tonight.
Absolutely agreed. Won't have nothing to add to that. You said it perfectly.
Well, it's great being on again with you, Don. And I don't know how soon we'll be on again together, but it's always a pleasure. I appreciate it. And to everybody who is following us and watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for being so loyal. And please share this with everyone you can. We'll get into some Oregon issues coming up because there's some crazy stuff going on in the state legislature. Hopefully we'll be getting to that in this next week. But last night was an important and special moment for our country, and we're glad to have shared it with you. Have a great night, everyone. Good night, Don, and we'll see everybody on the next episode of The Captive Audience. Good night, folks.
Everybody. That was fun. Take care.